Okay, today we're going to talk about how can data be compared. So the first thing we're going to do is it says data can be displayed. This is going to be visually in order to compare the center and variability. That's what we did the other day, was variability. Symmetrical data is displayed as a dot plot. So let me read that for you again. It says data can be displayed visually in order to compare the center and variability. Symmetrical data is displayed as a dot plot. Okay, so we have question number 1 here, and this is data from 2 classes, and they were asked how many minutes each student traveled to school in the morning. So in room 434, which is right here, that was the data they got, and in room 425, this is the data they got. So question 1 says use the dot plot below to create, use the data below to create a dot plot and answer the questions. So we're going to do room 434 first, and someone traveled 5 minutes, so we're going to put a dot there. Someone traveled 7, so we're going to put a dot there. 2 people traveled 8, so I'm going to put 2 dots on top of themselves. 2 4s, another 7, another 5, another 4, and another 7. So the 4 should have 3 dots, the 5 should have 2 dots, the 7 should have 3 dots, and the 8 should have 2 dots. That's a dot plot. So now we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to do it for room 425. Now the data doesn't fit on my screen, but if you look at your paper, room 425, one person had 4, 2 people had 5, one person had 6, one person had 3, another person had 6, another person had 4, a person had 7, and 2 more people had 5. So if you did this plot correctly, this should have 1 dot for 3, 2 for 4, 4 for 5, 2 for 6, and 1 for 7. Okay, so question number 2 says, what observations can you make about each data set? So you need to compare room 434 and 425. What observation can you make about that graph or that dot plot? Okay, one of the things I see is, first of all, room 425 kind of peaks like this, and 434 sort of plateaus. So room 425 peaks, it has its top part at the 5-minute mark. Like if you scroll down, it peaks right here at the 5-minute mark. So I'm going to write that down. Room 425 peaks at 5 minutes. Whereas room 434, they don't really have a big peak. They do have minor peaks at 4 minutes and 7 minutes. So room 434 has minor peaks at 4 and 7 minutes. Question 3 says, determine the measure of center in each data set. Okay, so when we talk about the measure of center, we're talking about either the mean or the median. So you have to be able to figure out which one you're talking about. So if you go back to the top of this page, where it says, that talks about dot plots being symmetrical data, if you look at our variability notes that we took the other day, variability with symmetrical data is relative to mean average deviation. So I'm going to write MAD above here so we remember. So when we go back here, when it's talking about the measure of center, because it's a dot plot, we want to find the mean. So for room 434, you need to add all that data up and then divide by the number of sets of data you have. So when you add room 434 up, you should get 59, and then 59 divided by 10 is 5.9. Now when you do room 425, when you add those up, you should get 50, and 50 divided by 10 is 5. So question 4 says, what is the difference between the center of room 425 and the center of room 434? So remember, the word difference means we're going to subtract. The center of room 425 is 5, and the center of room 434 is 5.9. So we're going to do 5.9 minus 5. So the difference between those is 0.9. So two important things from this page. Dot plots are symmetrical data, and symmetrical data, we use the MAD, mean average deviation. Okay? So dot plot, MAD, mean average deviation. Okay, so on this page, we want to use the data to calculate the mean absolute deviation of each classroom, and then answer the questions below. So the first thing I want to do is I want to write my numbers, but I want to write them in order. So room 434, they had 4, 4, 4. Then kids that traveled 5 minutes. Another kid traveled 5 minutes. They had 3 kids that traveled 7 minutes. And they had 2 kids that traveled 8 minutes. So remember, to find the mean absolute deviation, the first thing we have to find is the mean. Well, we did that on this page. The mean for room 434 is 5.9. So I'm just going to write that here, that my mean, or my M, is 5.9. And then remember, what we had to do is we had to subtract our data from our mean. So what you need to do is do 4 minus 5.9, which is negative 1.9. So that's going to be for all your 4s. So these are all going to be negative 1.9. Then we're going to do 5 minus 5.9, and that's negative 0.9. Now we're going to do 7 minus 5.9, and that's a positive 2, or that's a positive 1.1. So all your 7s are 1.1. Now we're going to do 8 minus 5.9, which is 2.1. And we don't need this right here, so we can X that out. And then do you remember what we did next? How did we get this column right here? Right, we just pushed everything over and made it positive. So 1.9, 1.9, 1.9, 0.9, 0.9, 1.1, 1.1, 1.1, 2.1, 2.1. Now you have to add those together and then divide. So when you added all those together, you should have gotten 15, and we have 10 pieces of data. So 15 divided by 10 is 1.5. So our MAD is 1.5. Now I want you to do this one on your own. Hit pause, and when you're finished, hit play and check your work. Okay, so when you did room 425, you should have put all your numbers in order. It just makes it easier to do it that way. You don't have to, but it makes it easier. Then you found the deviation from the mean. Then you found the absolute deviation from the mean. And then your MAD should have been 0.8. So the mean for room 425 is 5. The mean absolute deviation is 0.8. So let's answer the questions at the bottom. So it says, what observations can you make about the mean absolute deviation of each classroom? So room 434 was 1.5. Room 425 was 0.8. Room 425 is closer to 0. So that means room 425 is closer to the mean and has less variability than room 434. So what you're looking at here is like the spread of your data. Your MAD needs to be close to 0. The bigger your MAD is, the more variable your data is. The closer your MAD is to 0, the more condensed your data is. So room 425 just has less variability in their data. All the numbers are a lot more closer than room 434. So how is the difference in the centers related to the variability of each classroom? So if you remember in the previous slide, our difference in centers was right here, 0.9. So our difference in our centers is 0.9. That 0.9 is more closely related to the variability here. Do you see how 0.9 is a lot closer to 0.8? It's further away from 1.5. So what that means is that the 0.9 is closely related to room 425. All right. So most of you, I know when you watch these, some people just don't listen to the sound and they just write down what I write. So if you're actually listening to this video and writing it down, in the bottom right of this paper you're on right now, this back page of your notes, I want you to draw a star in the bottom right corner and circle it. That way if I come around and check your paper, I know that you listened to the video and you watched it. So thank you for those that did that. So in the bottom right corner, draw a star and circle that star on this paper. All right, thank you, and you can start on your homework.